Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Advisor with Stacey Chillemi. Today, I'm very excited because we have Allison Guilbault, and she is an amazing therapist. She is part of our podcast team, and she has her own podcast show on our channel. So take a look at it. It's a note from your therapist, and she is just an amazing person, and she has such great knowledge in all areas of life. And today, she's going to talk about relationships which goes down to our friendships and really thinking about zero fakes allowed, your evolution in friendships. You get to that point where you're just sick of those people who make believe they're your friend. Maybe they want something from you. Maybe they're just because your kids are in the same grade and, so they're just hanging around you. Or, maybe it's because they want something from you. But you know what? It gets to a point where you don't want those fakes in your life. And she has a lot to say about it today. But before we begin, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors today, their speaker and iHeartRadio, who's sponsoring the show. So I just want to say thank you guys for making this happen. And Allison, I love the idea that you want to talk about zero fakes allowed because
Mm,
this is a topic that I think so many women, and even men too, could resonate
yeah.
to. But I feel like women, come to terms with it, and I feel like sometimes men are in a little bit of a denial. They're not going to really, want to admit that their bro has faked them out. He's not really your bro. He doesn't really care about you.
Yeah.
You're calling him, but he's not calling you back. But yet, you don't want to admit that he's not really a bro, or women will be like, huh, I can't believe, and women are more apt to call it out, but men not so much. But what's your intake when it comes to
Mm.
fakes and how do we deal with that in our lives? Like, what was your thoughts today when you were coming on the show?
Yeah, great questions. So I think that, I wanted to talk about this primarily because we talk a lot about relationships, right? They're such an
Yeah.
important part of our lives. And yeah, we don't really give in adulthood, we don't give a lot of time and attention into thinking about our friendships. And I think when we're talking about romantic partnerships, right, like there's kind of a continual check-in, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to stay together, you fight, you have big conversations, you might break up. But when it comes to friends, we don't commit to that same level of check-ins.
Yeah.
And, a lot of us kind of inherited our friends, right? Like I can speak for myself. I stayed and maintained friendships from long in my past, right? I still talk to some of the people I went to high school with, certainly in college with.
Yeah.
And so, we don't have these really like discerned breakup points. And yet, right, like
Mhm.
we evolve and we change.
Yeah.
And, it makes a whole lot of sense that we would outgrow our friends, right? And I
Yeah.
just don't think that we really talk about that enough. So we can feel a lot of guilt when we're noticing, like, hey, this person doesn't line up to me anymore. Actually, I don't want the same things as them. I don't value the same things. They're
Yeah.
boring me. I find them too gossipy. Tons of reasons
Yeah.
that we can sort of misalign with our
Yeah.
friendships. Um, and not many of us know what to do there, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do we do?
I was like in the same boat, like we were talking about this before the show. Like, I got to a point where I had those group of girlfriends and then, especially, I started growing, changing and wanting different things for myself. And I was starting to think differently. And, some of my friends were still thinking like they were in the 80s and 90s. And, and some of them were just like, they didn't really have much aspirations to want to do things, or they were just more interested in gossiping with their friends and talking about who, look, I can't believe she wore those pants. Oh my God, they don't match her shirt. What was she thinking?
Mhm.
And those things don't interest me. It kind of like turns me off. And, so it was like I slowly saw myself starting to kind of not talk to some of these people because not because I didn't like them. They're nice people, but I just didn't really see any common denominators, bonds with them like I did at one point. And then some of them were just like negative energy. Even though they were good people, they just
Mhm.
were very negative. So everything that came out of their mouth, sometimes I felt like I walked out of the room and I felt like a vacuum like sucked the energy out of me because it was like,
Yeah.
or even a phone call sometimes, over the phone. It was like the energies were just pulling through through the phone waves. And when I hung up that phone, I was like, ah, because it was just complaint after complaint after complaint.
Yeah.
And I was positive and I'm trying to grow and I'm trying to do this. And,
Yeah.
and then, you have those friends that conform and they're just so, people pleasers. And some, for me, it's like I would be like, just talk and do what makes you happy, you know. Don't do things for others. You know, of course we all like to do things for others, but when it comes to our joy and happiness, you have to do what's going to
Mm.
make you happy and not do because let's say your spouse wants you to do something, but you're like, I really don't want to do that. And you know, there are a lot of women out there that will do it because they're living the lives of their husbands and they're not living their life. And you see the same thing with your friends, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's like, you know, after a while, you know, your friends are kind of fake, you know. A lot of them I see it when we get older. I don't know how you feel, but I felt like a lot of my friends weren't happy in their life, you know, but yet they put on this facade and they
Yeah.
became very fake and they had to show the world that life was grand, even though inside it really wasn't. And you could see that if you know what to look for, you can tell which ones really are happy and joyful and which ones are really like wearing that mask. Like you ever see the little emoji mask and
Uh,
they have the frown or the sad face behind and they have the happy face in front of you,
yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. I quit drinking a few years ago, and that was really profound for me because something that happened that I was unexpected to me is I actually really started to pay more attention to my friendships. Right? A
Hmm.
lot of them were just on almost like autopilot, right? Like, oh, well, we do this thing on Tuesdays and we meet up for happy hour on Fridays. And I would still I still go to bars, I still hang out. But what I was noticing is like the conversations were really gossipy, right? Like I
Yeah.
was working at a bar at the time and I was very close to my coworkers, year-long friendships, right?
Yeah.
10, 12 year long friendships. And we would go out and, we would badmouth the other employees.
Yeah.
And I was at this juncture point in my life where my career was taking off, right? I was still working at the bar to have a survival job, but I was like
Yeah.
really invested in my therapy practice. I was starting my own podcast. I was writing my book. And I found like drained in those conversations, right? It's
Yeah.
like they're so stale. We're
Mhm.
talking about the same thing. Nothing feels inspirational, right? Like
Yeah.
commenting on someone's pants or whether they're happy or whether they're not happy or what they did or what they didn't. It's like it's so other oriented and I didn't leave feeling uplifted.
Yes.
And over time, I started to bring quite a lot of attention to who I was circling with, right?
Yeah.
And my friendship pool became much smaller, right?
Right.
But I started severing ties with a lot of like I don't need that many people in my life, right? It's really like
Yeah.
for me in my 40s, it's quality over quantity.
Oh yeah.
And I have a certain group of friends who are still my friends today where
Yeah.
I feel like we share dreams and we talk about adventures that we're on and we're really like celebrating each other and it just feels really good. Like it's very soul nourishing.
Yeah.
And there was such a distinct difference between like some of the groups of friends that I was hanging out with. And to your point with like the emoji, I don't think it has to be like bar culture, right? We find
Yeah.
friends in all cultures of life, but there are certain people that, if they don't know how to get out of their own way and they don't really know how to adapt their own happiness, right? They're going to bring other people down, right? Like
Yeah.
the vibration comes down and, it's really sad energy, right? And
Yeah.
to the original point of like but how do we notice these things, right?
Right.
We're not conditioned to sort of pull back and reflect.
Yeah.
And, to give credit to the people that I'm, sort of talking about, I don't think that any one of them is a bad person. We
Right.
were just misaligned in what we wanted out of our lives,
Yeah.
right? I really like to be in a room with people that just light up. And I'm not talking like toxic positivity, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about people who are like trying to make the best out of their life, right? And
Yeah.
we're sharing good connection and we're talking, of course, there's like plenty of room to like bitch about our husbands and our children and things like that, right? Not every conversation needs to be this beautiful, uplifting,
Yeah.
epilogue.
Hmm.
Um, but it's just, I call them energy vampires, right? It's like I'm leaving feeling smaller, right?
Yeah.
And making a conscious effort to minimize those experiences so that I had more time to invest in people that were really lifting me up, that were
Yeah.
making me feel celebrated, that were feeling supported, was like one of the biggest wellness decisions that I've ever made for myself, right? It really shifted my life, becoming more intentional about what rooms I was in.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's wonderful. I think, that's when I started doing that, I started to feel so much better. It was like I started to pull away from the people that I felt were pulling me down, or they just weren't, they weren't doing anything positive in my life. And then it was amazing, but it was like new people started to come into my life, and people of either the same level or above me, and they all had this, spunk to them, and they all were looking to do similar things, and had similar dreams, in their own way, and they all had this special uniqueness, but everybody, had this nice positive attitude. Like, yeah, we all have our days, and like
Of
we're,
course.
but they, for the most part, they always try to look on the bright side, and try
Yeah.
to really, like, strive to, really get, to a higher level in life, whether it be, mentally, emotionally, physically,
Mhm.
business wise. They were just trying to, grasp, and leave their legacy, and really live their potential in life. And, I really like that a lot. And, so when those people just started coming in, I really feel like sometimes our energy kind of draws people in, so if you're a miserable person, you're going to bring in some negative people around you. And then when you wonder why you're feeling like this, well, look around, and who's your what is it, the first 5 or 7 people that you spend the most time with? That's the kind of person you're going to become, they say.
Hmm.
So it's like you have to really stop and think, what kind of energy do I have? Who am I bringing in my life? Are these the
Yeah.
friendships that I really want? Are these the friendships that are going to be beneficial in my life?
Absolutely. And, even if we're not talking about, the examples we're using is like, oh, here's this pool of like toxic friends and here's these pool of like uplifting friends.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to move away from the toxicity to move into the inspiration.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not as clear cut as that, right? And we might experience, in adulthood that, you and I were talking offline, and I think it's an important example. I just had a kid. My kid's 6 months old, like tomorrow. So she's a
Congrats.
little bean. Thank you. And, that's a significant life change for me, right? And so it means that some of my friendships are going to pivot. And that's okay, right? Like
Yeah.
we meet our friends based on a common denominator. So if you're in high school, in part, you've given up all control. It's sort of just like where your parents decided to plop down and you go to that school, right?
Yeah.
College, we have a little more autonomy, right? We usually pick our colleges based on some sort of interest. But as life continues, we keep having these juncture points in which our life changes,
Yeah.
right? So that doesn't mean that like suddenly I'm a mom and I need to like kick out all my childless friends, right? Like absolutely not. But there's going to be some conversations that I'm going to feel naturally more supported or naturally more, connected to with my
Yeah.
mom friends. And, I can find other friends to talk about other things with. But I
Yeah.
think, we don't often talk about that too, is like what happens when we pivot
Hmm.
and are just experiencing like, wow, we don't have as many common connection points as we once did, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think back to college, I mean, I was living in New York City. We were all, partying, but we were also all ambitious. We all went to NYU. Like, there was a lot of connection points.
Yeah.
20 years later, I've pivoted from those people in many, many ways. Some of them still remain, some of them don't.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's part of our growth and it's part of our evolution. And I think it says quite a lot about us if we're able
Yeah.
to sort of reflect and, have conversations, at least with ourselves, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know what, this person maybe is great for this. It's nostalgic. Maybe we have a history there, but they're not the person I'm going to bring my marital troubles to. Or
Right.
I love going to yoga with this person, but, they're not my biggest confidant. Like, we're allowed to have different spheres of friends. Not
Yeah.
everybody sort of has to be like our bestie in the way that maybe when we were younger, we experienced friendships.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And when it comes to fake friendships, have you ever experienced, like, when you had friends and maybe they just wanted to be around you because of a specific reason, or they were friends with so and so and they were part of the group, and they really didn't care about you, whether they disliked something or they were jealous, and whatever it may be, and they kind of just played like your friend. And then, and sometimes one person could like somebody and then the other person is just like, that person's not for me. But they're not going to say it. They'll just be smiles and, have your conversations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people get hurt by that because, sometimes people think, hey, I got a real friend. I really like this person. And the other person's thinking, this person gets on my nerves. I just hang with her because Judy's hanging with her, And, sometimes what do you feel about fake friendships? Did you ever find any common denominators with that type of stuff, like different things to look for? Who are your real friends and who are your fake friends? Because it's really important, I think, if we can spot who our fake friends are and who our real friends are, to kind of like boot those negative people out of our lives because they're just going to pull you down and they're going to hurt you emotionally, which is not good for you mentally or physically.
No, yeah. I mean, I would imagine probably all of us have some sort of a story. For me, the one that like glaringly j jumps out, I had a friend of mine who at the time I would have absolutely considered a best friend, like without question, refer to
Yeah,
this person as my best friend. And he worked for my husband. And when my husband and him severed the relationship that they had as like an employer employee,
yeah.
uh, it, it it became absolutely hellaciously toxic.
Mm,
And what I didn't see coming, and now it sort of feels obvious, is like this person was really using me,
right.
and was getting inside information, was gossiping about me. I would tell him something in confidence, and he would tell everybody. And it took me a long time to really discover that. And I'm not even talking about like in my 20s. This was like a few years ago. So I was in my
Yeah,
late 30s.
yeah,
Um, and if I had looked back, right, because it's like a big reflection point for me, it's like the writing was on the wall. I was just
yeah,
ignoring it, right?
yeah.
And if I think back to the conversations that we had, first of all, they weren't deep and meaningful, right? They were really gossipy, they were really superficial. Um, I had a few big events, right? This person didn't show up to,
Mm,
right? I had excuses at the time, but like,
yeah,
someone who's really deeply meaning for you is going to find a way to show up to the events that are important.
exactly.
Um, and that was an enormous life lesson. And I have really become much more intentional about who I spend time with.
Yeah,
But I think like what are the red flags? Like how do you feel when you leave a conversation with this person, right?
yeah,
Are they showing up to important events for you? My mom used to tell me this when I was like a kid, and it has proven true. But if you're sitting in a conversation and they're, smack talking other people, chances
yeah,
are when you leave that room, they're smack talking you,
right.
right? And so, someone who's really gossipy is probably going to be gossipy in a lot of rooms because that's more of a personality trait than a situational trait.
Yeah,
Um, so, I think all of these things are now that I really value inside of friendships, right?
yeah,
I know that I am a good friend. So, I'll show up to your stuff, but I'm allowed to say I would like you to show up to mine too, right?
right. Hmm.
Deep, meaningful conversations. Like, what are we
Yeah,
talking about? Are we just talking about the Kardashians or like what I saw in Severance? Are we
yeah,
actually talking about problems that we're having? When I share a problem, is the person sort of like sitting there being like, haha, right? Or are they
yeah,
helping me work through something? Are they supporting me?
yeah.
Um, those are the real relationships that we want really at all stages, but certainly like, I don't want to say later life. I'm only in my 40s, geez, but like in adult
Yeah,
life, right? Like,
right. Yeah,
I mean, if you have a career, you have kids, you're adulting in any significant way, your time is probably limited, right? We're
yes,
not like frolicking around like when we were 13.
yeah,
So choosing where to invest that time is like it's important, right?
yes,
So, the energy in which you leave a conversation with, is this person showing up for you, whether it's whatever you need? Is it answering the phone or texting you, asking you, sending you a good meme? Like,
yes,
are they involved in your love language?
yeah.
Right? Like we're allowed to ask things of friends. And I think we forget that.
Yeah, I think we do. And a lot of times too, I was actually, the signs were right in front of me. and I chose to ignore them. And I don't know why. And I've done that several times. I've had, several people in my life that I felt really close to. And, the relationships, I guess when we talked, they weren't as meaningful as I thought they were. When you look back, sometimes you see things differently. But
Yes.
yet it's like, I was holding on, hoping to, we can be BFFs. Yeah, we're great friends. Yeah, let's do this weekend. Let's do this and this. And, you know, I was feeling it. They weren't, and it's like, but deep down in my gut, like I knew it wasn't right. You know what I mean? Like I saw the red flags, but for whatever reason, I ignored it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think recognizing red flags and then taking an action step is something that seems really easy and is actually really difficult when you put your money where your mouth is,
Yeah.
right? So same, intuitively, things felt off.
Hmm.
When everything, hit the fan, and I had to look back. I was like, well, yeah, no, that was kind of, I could have saw it coming. I should have
Yeah.
seen it coming, but I didn't. And it's like, why don't we? Well, because emotions are really complex. It's easy to simplify something down to like, but someone showed you red flags, so why didn't you just leave? But
Hmm.
we're more complex than that, right? We have big
Yeah.
emotions. History can play into things, right? Some of us have people-pleasing tendencies and boundaries are difficult. We
Yeah.
don't have a lot of skill set around maybe saying to a friend, hey, you're hurting my feelings, or I'm worried about this isn't reciprocal. Like
Yeah.
we don't make a lot of space for that stuff.
Right.
So it's not too surprising to me. That even though the red flags were there for both of us, and I'm sure listeners will have a story of their own like this, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. But we
Right.
can use that information for the future, right? Like now
Yes.
I more strategically pick my friends. Now I know that good friends can withstand difficult conversations, right?
Yeah.
Like that's also a red flag for me if I'm saying like, hey, you hurt my feelings, or when you didn't show up, or you didn't answer my text, and they're like giving me the cold shoulder.
Yeah.
That's probably not a super meaningful friend, right?
Yes.
Because like if one of my good friends said that to me, I would be like, wow, I'll have a think about that. Like, what
Yeah.
was going on? Why didn't I answer the phone? Maybe I was just overwhelmed myself, but we'd have a conversation, right?
Right. And I think
Yeah.
that's a good point to make because some people they kind of when shit hits the fan, they kind of like move away and they
Mhm.
disappear, But I think a good friend, you could have, friendships are not perfect, just like relationships with your partner aren't perfect. You're gonna have your ups and downs. Well, why can't friendships have their ups and downs? And why can't, I would think communication with your friend would be important because if you have a problem, one person should be able to say, hey, you know what? We went out the other night, you said a couple of things that really hurt my feelings and I'm really upset, by this. And then,
Mhm.
you could talk it over and then, one person may apologize because they didn't really realize the impact they had on the other person and come to terms and make up and move on. And it's like, communication I think is really important. So, a lot of times you don't see that. You see people just kind of something happens and that's it. Boom, they're gone.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And communication, it doesn't matter what relationship you have. You could be talking to your kid, your spouse, your boss. It's like communication is it, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
fundamental component of a good relationship, of a smooth relationship.
Yeah.
There is no relationship that's going to be without conflict. Like that shouldn't be the way that we measure whether a friendship is deep or good or powerful. It's
Yeah.
like it's the ability to overcome conflict, right?
Yeah.
Is not to have feelings hurt and then just ignore that and let that become resentment, right?
Right.
It's to embrace it. And again, trust your friend. Trust your friend that real friendships do sustain difficult conversations, like period, period, period.
Yeah, I knew someone that every time that she had an interaction with someone where she didn't like what they did something, she wouldn't even approach them. She would just block them on Facebook or block them on the internet and just never talk to them again. But
Yeah.
it didn't matter if she was with them for 5 years or she was friends with them for 10. One thing and it just set her off and she
Yep.
kept her mouth shut and then she iced them. And
Yeah.
that was it. And I never got that. Like, well, yeah, I'm more maybe because I'm a Pisces, I'm more emotional, so I could verbalize things really well. I guess that isn't the writer in me, but I could easily express my emotions to somebody. But, I think it's important for people to be able to express their emotions with each other, because it's a part of life. You're going to always have
Mhm.
emotions and everybody's allowed to have emotions. I hate when people will come and they'll say, ah, why are you acting like that? Well, they have a right to act like that. I have a right to
Hmm.
have those emotions. If something
Sure.
bothers me and I'm distraught about it or I'm upset about it or angry or frustrated or whatever the emotion is, I have a right to be that way. You might be in the room and it doesn't even faze you, it doesn't bother you. Well, that's fine, you know.
Yeah,
But everybody has a right to feel the way they do, and other people should
absolutely.
respect that, I think.
Absolutely. And to your point, I had a friend like that too, who I used to think of like was very icy, right? Like
Yeah.
the moment things went wrong, like there comes the block, right? Like
Yeah.
mentally, physically, literally, right? Like Facebook block, Instagram block, text block.
Yeah.
And though I was never on the receiving end of that block, it did shift like how comfortable I felt in the presence of this person, right? Like
Yeah.
I was always walking on eggshells.
Hmm.
And, to the point of this episode, it's like that also is a bit of a red flag. That doesn't mean you need to like, I'm not gonna say a bit, that is a red flag, right? That doesn't mean you need to like write off this friend, right? But if you're feeling like you have to walk on eggshells with someone,
Hmm.
that relationship cannot be that deep, right? Because
Yeah.
the nature of depth involves vulnerability, it involves mutual respect, it involves communication,
Yeah.
right? And so if those things are absent from a friendship, right? Like the question then becomes like, what is this friendship actually doing for me? Right? Maybe this
Yeah.
person again is like fine to go have coffee with or go to yoga with, but this isn't like we want someone that we're defining a friend, like a real friend as, like,
Yeah.
there's depth there. Right? We
Hmm.
want depth. We
Yeah.
want support.
I do. I think I when I in a friendship, I want to, you don't have to be my best buddy, but I want to
Mhm.
feel like I have like a friendship that's meaningful,
Meaningful.
not like I don't want to have that emoji friend that, kind of hides behind the emoji, you know?
Yeah. Like who's got time for that in their 40s, right? Like 30s,
Not
40s,
me.
50s, like I don't know. In your 20s maybe, but like nah. Adulthood, we need more than that.
Yeah, I say at that point, get a life. It's just like 'cause you're not doing enough if that's what you're doing in life. If you're
That,
focusing on everything else, but and taking the time to like block everybody and to focus on everybody but yourself, then
yeah,
obviously there's some issues that have to be addressed, and that could be a whole other
absolutely.
episode for sure.
Yep.
I was like we were talking before the show. I was in the middle of reading the book from Mel Robbins, and she has let them theory, and her thing is that what it's like if someone doesn't invite you out, all your girlfriends are going out. She talks in the book, and all you find out that everybody went out to this like dinner, this girls' night, and you weren't invited, and you see pictures on Facebook, and it's like, why wasn't I called? Why wasn't I invited? Her thing was just let them. If that's what they want to do, let them. We don't have control over other people, and we shouldn't let other actions, really get to us. If that's what they want, let them, because
That's it.
obviously if that's the case, then maybe those friends aren't meant for that for us, and maybe it's better and just let
Yes,
them because maybe we have to focus on trying to find better friends or maybe,
absolutely.
it's just what they were going out and they were maybe celebrating something and it didn't fit to have you there and so they didn't ask, whatever the case may be. Don't put too much thought into it. We sometimes I feel like and I've done this with friendships too, and I've gone in my head, what did I do? What did I say? Why don't they like me? I don't get it. Why aren't they calling? Da 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 da. And it's like I'm badgering myself emotionally. For what
Mm.
purpose? Every
Yeah.
moment we waste, we take away from our lives. Is this what I'm
Oh,
going to spend my time doing? And everybody does it, but why?
yeah. Yeah. It's and that's where, I love mindfulness. It's like notice what's happening without judgment. And it's like, oh, I'm overthinking what other people are doing. Is that bringing me joy right now? Like, no, right? I
Yeah.
love the let them theory, right? So it's like, well, let them have a good time, but let me value, like, do a little eval here, a little
Yeah.
re-eval. And it's like, actually, I need friends who include me. Okay, well, maybe then this isn't the right friend group for me, right? And
Yeah.
in all of the therapy and coaching that I do, one of the tenets that I just live by is like we can't make room for new things without letting other things go, right? Like
Yeah.
life just our cup is only so full,
Yes.
right? So, when we allow ourselves the permission to really evaluate, like, is this thing working? In this case, is this friendship working? And
Yeah.
ultimately, if we get to a no, it's actually a beautiful opportunity to let new people in, right?
Yes.
Like let them from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that, right? Like the let go feels really scary, but the let go immediately, I've never seen it fail yet, right? Like it invites opportunity in, and
Yeah.
that can be really empowering and really beautiful.
Oh, I definitely think so. And that's so true. We can only do so much in a day.
Mhm.
We can only do so much, in a lifetime. It's like, so if you have a lot of things on your plate at the moment, sometimes it's good to let go of certain things in your life and, bring some room, like you said, for other things to come in. And that could
Yeah.
really change things up. It could bring joy. It could bring happiness in your life. And, maybe, think about, like maybe letting go of some of those old friends that aren't, that are fake friends and making some room for some real good friends to maybe make their way into your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, something that I always think about, I think is really important is when I'm talking to clients and they're like, but where am I going to find these friends? I'm like, do you know how many yous are sitting around asking the same question, right? Like,
Yeah,
there are people all over that are pivoting in their life and are looking to meet and acquaint themselves and build community with new humans.
yeah.
So, like, trust me, like, if there's a million fish out in the sea for romantic partnerships, there's that many more when we're talking about friendships.
Oh,
People
I
are out
definitely think
there, they
so.
exist.
Yeah, no.
You will find them. Have confidence.
It's my husband was joking around one day. He goes, you could make you know how successful a website of just making friends, like a making friend website where you could just like go in and meet people and maybe go out to dinner with somebody. Like you see like one
Totally.
couple has like a similar personality and then you go out for dinner and meet
Love
them,
it.
and I'm like, you know what? I bet you that would do what really well because there are people. It's sometimes because it's hard. You work all week and then you have the weekend, and then it's like you go places, but a lot of people have their little cliques when they go out and stuff like that. So, you do come across people, and sometimes I find like when you're in groups of people, that's when you start to make friends. People bring people, and then you start to like, have things in common, and then, friendships start to develop slowly. You might go out with
Totally.
them again and so forth. But yeah, it's like you have to reach out too. And, you
Mhm.
can't expect people to just come to you, you have to
Yes,
make an effort also, I think.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and that's like, kind of the other half of the let them theory, right? It's also like
Yeah,
let me empower myself to like go out into the world and open myself and invite in opportunity, right? And like that takes some effort. For me, I just made a bunch of new friends and I met them at my gym. It's like, well, if I
yeah,
didn't go to the gym, I wouldn't have met them, right? So it's like it doesn't
exactly.
just happen in a vacuum. Like life has to be experienced outside of your house.
And
You
you
put
know,
yourself out there somewhere.
yes, you definitely have to put yourself out there somewhere. And it's so funny because Mel Robbins said the same exact thing you just said now, and you haven't even read the book yet. And it's like let me. So it's like, let them. So let them go. Let whatever is whatever, and then let me, take action and do something for myself that's going to make me feel better. So, I was like, just like you said, and you didn't even read the book yet, and it just came
It's on its way. It's supposed to be my doorstep today. Well,
to you. If you had to take today's conversation, you wanted to really pull out some important factors, like what are some things you really like to leave the listeners with today?
what are my bullet points here? I think just to echo what we've said, it's okay to pivot, right? Like growth, evolution, personal growth, right? All of our healing, it does mean that we're going to need new things and allowing the space and permission to give yourself for that. And then, really just taking inventory on how you're feeling in the rooms that you're in. I think that's just like I want to beat that point. That's like really, really important.
Mhm.
And it's okay. Like allow yourself to outgrow your friends if that's
Yeah,
it doesn't say it's not a failing on them, it's not a failing on you. It's just like, look, we're not meant to be, there's wonderful humans out there that we're not meant to partner with. There's wonderful
right,
humans out there that we're not meant to befriend forever. Right?
right.
Allow our relationships to change.
100%. That's
Yeah.
great advice. Thank you. And, tell everybody about the services that you provide.
Yeah, so I'm a therapist in New Jersey. I'm actually full at the moment, but I do that. I also offer coaching for women. I work specifically with kind of like, our cliche overachievers and perfectionists out there. Successful women that are kind of sick of their hustle, and really are looking to realign to their passion. So that's my passion. I also have a podcast myself called Becoming Unstoppable, found on all the places you find your pods.
Hmm.
Apple and Spotify and all those good places. But yeah, that's mostly my jam. And I live on Instagram, as we all do these days, and I am at a note from your therapist. So
Love it.
yeah, got that going too.
And if people want to look on your website again, where can they find you?
Yeah, it's www.anotefromyourtherapist.com.
I love that title. It's so easy to remember. A note from your therapist. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Allison, for coming on the show today. This was an amazing, episode. I really liked it because it's a topic that, is so prevalent. And if you ever even go on YouTube, you'll see that when they do these YouTube videos,
Mm.
you'll see like the numbers just skyrocket because so many people, are so sick of having fake friends because they fall for it. They fall for their niceness. They think it's more than what it really is. And, so many people get hurt and people don't want to get hurt, so it's like,
No.
people will ask, what's the red flags? What do I look for? How do I know if they're a real friend or a fake friend? So these
Yeah.
are really great things that we talked about today. So people could actually like, really, look out for these things. Because if you know what to look for, you could actually spot a good friend versus, maybe an acquaintance or maybe a friend that you maybe want to just wave from the distance, and just smile, like, maybe
Yeah.
go over and have that 5 minute conversation and then excuse yourself, because, they're just not meant to be around. They're the vacuums that we were talking about earlier on. So, it all, I think it's really good that people learn the red flags. They understand people's body language too. If I had to suggest anything to anybody before we leave this show tonight, I would say, go on Facebook and start to learn about body language. Start to learn about how
Mm-hmm.
people move their body, their eyes, their shoulders, their hands, how they're pivoting their legs, and you'll be surprised. You could actually know exactly what someone's saying and know if it's true or not. Because someone could be saying one thing, but their body's saying something completely different. And if you understand body language, you could just sit there and smile, but you'll know the truth and you'll know what to expect. And that will keep you on your toes. Because if you know what they really thinking, then you know how to protect yourself so you don't fall into the trap of being hurt by fake friends.
Oh my God, is this going to be our next episode? I was like,
I would
I
love
just
that.
sparked an idea. Do we do one on body language? Maybe.
I
Stay
think so. I,
tuned.
I would love to do that. I think I'll do some more research on it. I know about body
Same.
language, but I'll do some more research on it and maybe we'll go over that because I think that's like a great topic to talk about in the future. Because you
Totally.
know what? It really is true. You could, there's so many times like I would see people say things that I could just see, in their body language. They're talking so confidently and this and that, but their body is showing doubt and lack of confidence. And I'm like, well, they're not really being truly honest. They're not, or a person that's saying, yeah, oh, I love her. And their body language is saying, I can't stand that bitch. So it's like you're
Hmm.
just looking and you're just smiling. And it's like, okay. And like your mom said, if they talk crap about you, about other people in front of you, you definitely
Yep.
know that they're going to be doing that behind your back,
Absolutely.
Definitely. Well, this has been a great show, Allison, and I
Thank you
look
so
forward to
much.
our next one. And I will
Absolutely.
see you soon. You have a great day.
You too.